The first half of the 19th century saw a dramatic change in English organ building, and this was mostly due to the visit of Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy to England from 1829 onwards, which, for the first time, revealed Bach's organ music in its full mastery to English audiences.
Well, of course, in the 1830s and that sort of period when Mendelssohn was in the UK a lot, playing his organ sonatas at Birmingham Town Hall, for instance, that had a huge influence. And I know that one of my very illustrious predecessors as organist of Gloucester Cathedral, Samuel Sebastian Wesley, was very influenced by Mendelssohn, and Wesley apparently could improvise complete fugues with proper exposition and middle section and strettos and so on. So I think we owe Mendelssohn really a great debt of gratitude in what he gave us with his organ compositions.
In order to meet the demands of this new music, English organs needed pedal boards, which began to be added to newly built instruments from about 1840. Developments then continued, and by 1900, a new type of organ had emerged that was peculiar to England.
The interesting thing about organs built during the later 19th and early 20th centuries was that although the basic sound wasn't as brilliant or as interesting as the sound of earlier organs, they started to collect sounds which were much more varied and differentiated. The whole idea of the organ was that they were either grander, you could produce more sentimental sounds, and those sounds could be combined and altered quite quickly by having more keyboards and also composition pedals. For the first time, they become very important.
The organ here in Bristol Cathedral was rebuilt in 1907 by J.W. Walker and is a very fine example of this kind of English orchestral organ. Typical features here are, for example, on the top menu, we've got a high pressure reed. Here it's called tromba, sometimes it's called tuba. The main characteristic of that stop is it's very mellow in sound, but at the same time it's very loud. In fact, as loud as the whole rest of the organ. Let me show you. Another very helpful device are the thumb pistons under each division. They enable the organist to create a crescendo or decrescendo without any need for assistance. During the last 25 years of the 19th century, a renaissance of English organ music gradually grew in strength. One of the men who helped raise the profile of the organ was Charles Villiers Stanford. He was very good in using the colours of the English orchestral organ to full effect, particularly in his collection of organ sonatas. The organ sonata was a popular genre in Victorian England, and we even know that some organists improvised in sonata form at the end of services.
Well, of course, there were some really, really great organists in the Victorian period. You think of people like W.T. Best and Edwin Lemaire, G.D. Cunningham a little bit later, but they were all had absolutely incredible techniques and facility on the keyboard. And I think that within the cathedrals in England particularly, there was a very strong tradition of improvisation, the sort of very grandiose style, much as you hear in the organ music of people like Parry and Stanford, for instance, where it's a very consonant style, but with well-planned modulations and developments and so on. And I think it's interesting that the Royal College of Organists at the end of the 19th century had really quite disciplined tests in the fellowship diploma, testing the abilities of professional organists to improvise.
In 1864, the Royal College of Organists was founded to elevate and advance the professional status for organists. Improvisation, or extemporization as it was called back then, was at the very core of their diploma syllabus. If one wanted to pass the FRCO, they had to be able to improvise on a given theme. A strong advocate for the art of organ improvisation at that time was Frank Joseph Sawyer. His tutor on extemporization gives a fascinating insight into which styles Victorian organists used to improvise. So, for example, he tells us how to improvise marches, melodic intermezzos or variations. I'm going to use two of his themes for my sonata form movement. Now, the first theme is in D minor and rather martial in character. This is then contrasted by a second theme, now in G major, which sounds more like a fanfare. When improvising in sonata form, one has to follow a certain structure. So, when the first theme has been stated, there's a little bridge or linking section to the second theme. Then both themes are being developed until finally both themes come in again, but in a much grander way. What sort of chords does one use when improvising in the Victorian style? Well, the diminished seventh chord is very important there. It's even better if you can use a whole chain of diminished seventh chords, because this creates a really nice dramatic effect. Something like that. Also, it's very good to aim for a chromatic bass line. I'm gonna play a bass line now in the left hand, whilst the right hand is gonna accompany with chords. When improvising a melody, it's always advisable to use arpeggios, broken chords, something like that. That on its own doesn't really sound like Victorian music, it sounds more like Baroque style really. So in order to spice it up in a Victorian manner, it's very advisable to use appoggiaturas, little leaning notes, and then it would sound like that. Putting all these ingredients together should make for a very nice sonata form movement.